It was a warm, late summer afternoon in Wyoming. A Piper Cherokee carrying a family of 4 lifted off from Sheridan County Airport, bound for Boise, a trip the pilot had done before. Nothing unusual. But just 10 minutes later, the airplane vanished. No distress call. Just a brief blip from the emergency beacon, and then silence. And now, with the NTSB's preliminary report finally out, we're starting to see what might have gone wrong in those final minutes over Wolf, Wyoming, and honestly, some of these details are truly eye-opening. The flight took place on September 1st, 2025, around 4:12 p.m. Mountain Time. The airplane was a Piper PA-28-180 Cherokee, tail number November 8307 Whiskey, a small 4-seat single-engine aircraft built back in 1965. Despite its age, the Cherokee 180 is a reliable, simple machine, the kind of airplane that thousands of pilots have trusted for family trips and weekend hops for decades. This one was registered to Travis Austin Peden of Sheridan, Wyoming, and on this flight, it was being flown by 54-year-old pilot Earl S. Palmer. He was accompanied by his wife Cindy, age 53, and their 2 children, Amelia, just 13 years old, and Aaron, 11. The Palmers were on their way back home to Boise, Idaho, after what family members described as a short family trip to Wyoming. Earl reportedly planned to drop them off in Boise, then fly the same aircraft back solo to Sheridan later that day. At 4:02 p.m., the Cherokee rolled down the runway at Sheridan County Airport, climbing out westward toward rising terrain under clear skies. No flight plan had been filed, common for short VFR hops like this, and conditions were described as visual meteorological, or simply put, good weather. But about 10 minutes after departure, something went wrong. A brief emergency locator transmitter signal was received, then abruptly stopped. No mayday, no radio contact, just that one short electronic cry for help, and then nothing. What's remarkable, and honestly pretty incredible, is that one of the passengers, likely the surviving son, managed to call 911 from the crash site despite serious injuries. That quick thinking allowed rescuers to locate the wreckage roughly 16 miles west of Sheridan, near the small community of Wolf, Wyoming, tucked deep in mountainous, tree-covered terrain along the eastern slope of the Bighorn Mountains. The crash claimed the life of young Amelia Palmer, while both parents sustained serious injuries, and Aaron escaped with minor injuries. It's an absolutely heartbreaking outcome, and for a lot of us who fly or love aviation, it hits close to home, because this was supposed to be a routine 45-minute family flight. Investigators from the NTSB's Alaska Regional Office, led by Mark Ward, arrived at the crash site 2 days later on September 3rd, and what they found paints a clearer, but still incomplete, picture. All the major components of the airplane were located at the scene: the wings, the fuselage, the tail, and the engine. That tells investigators one very important thing. This wasn't an in-flight breakup or mid-air structural failure. The airplane hit the ground largely intact, which points toward a controlled flight into terrain scenario, or possibly a loss of climb performance that left the pilot unable to outclimb the rising ground. The wreckage showed no post-impact fire and no explosion. The engine data monitor and a portable GPS were recovered intact, both critical devices that can help reconstruct the flight's last moments. The GPS in particular will tell investigators the route, altitude, and speed profile during that short 10-minute window after takeoff. The engine monitor could show whether the engine was producing full power, or if something, anything, began to go wrong mechanically or with the fuel mixture. The weather that afternoon was not the problem. The NTSB report confirms clear skies, 10 miles of visibility, and only light winds, about 9 knots from 060 degrees. The temperature, however, stood out. A hot 31 degrees Celsius. That's important. We'll talk about why in a moment. The airport elevation is roughly 3,971 feet above sea level, meaning the airplane was already operating in thinner air before even leaving the ground. In conditions like that, high temperature plus high elevation equals one thing: high-density altitude, which can significantly cut engine performance and climbability. So, the plane was intact, the weather was clear, and yet it crashed just 10 minutes after takeoff. That's the big question. Investigators, Ms. T, and honestly, all of us watching this story unfold, are now asking if the weather was good and the airplane was under control, Why didn't it make it over the mountains? Here's where the technical side really comes into play, and it's what makes this crash so puzzling and honestly so frustrating. At takeoff, the temperature was about 31 degrees Celsius at an airport nearly 4,000 feet above sea level. That combination pushes the density altitude to roughly 6,400 feet. In plain English, the air was thinner, the engine made less power, and the wings produced less lift. The airplane behaved like it was taking off from a much higher elevation. In a Piper PA-28-180 that can slash the climb rate by 30 to 40%. Add in 4 people, baggage, and fuel for a cross-country flight, and you're likely near gross weight, meaning the aircraft's ability to climb was barely adequate. And that's where the terrain turns dangerous. West of Sheridan, the ground rises fast toward the Bighorn Mountains. By 16 miles out, hills reach 5,500 to 6,000 feet, so the pilot would have needed at least a 400 to 500 foot per minute climb to stay clear. On a hot day, in thin air, that's a tall order, even if the engine was working perfectly. Without a filed flight plan, terrain awareness may have relied mainly on visual references or a portable GPS. In flat country, that's fine, but in rising terrain, those cues can be deceptive. Valleys can make you think you're climbing when you're actually descending relative to the terrain. A shallow climb or a slight downdraft could have easily erased any remaining altitude margin. This is the textbook setup for a controlled flight into terrain, or CFIT, flying a perfectly functional airplane into the ground simply because the environment quietly outpaces performance. It's one of the most unforgiving traps in mountain flying, and sadly, it often catches good, experienced pilots by surprise. Now let's look at what investigators are zeroing in on, the mechanical data and the human side. The engine monitor and portable GPS that were recovered will be key. They'll show whether the engine was delivering full power or if there was any drop in RPM, fuel flow, or mixture issues. At high density altitudes, even a slight power loss or incorrect leaning can make the difference between climbing and settling into the terrain. Investigators will also check maintenance records. The airplane was built in 1965, but age itself isn't the issue. Condition and upkeep are. A worn plug, a weak magneto, or a small fuel restriction wouldn't necessarily cause an engine failure, but combined with heat and weight, it could be enough to erode climb performance. Then there's the human factor, which is always complex. Pilot Earl Palmer had previous flying experience, and while reports mention earlier aviation-related incidents, the NTSB will focus on recent training, health, and decision-making under those conditions. It's not hard to imagine the mindset. You've got your family on board, it's a quick hop home, the weather's clear, everything feels normal. But in mountain flying, normal can be deceptive. Add in the heat, full load, and rising terrain, and suddenly the margin for error is razor thin. It's a reminder that even skilled pilots can be caught out by the subtle, invisible math of performance loss. The NTSB will download and analyze that GPS and engine data, cross-check the numbers with terrain elevation, and confirm whether the aircraft was climbing, turning, or descending before impact. They'll perform metallurgical tests on the propeller and cylinders to verify if power was being produced, and they'll interview the surviving passengers, including the pilot, when possible. It's still far too early to reach any conclusions. The final report could reveal a performance trap, a subtle mechanical issue, or something we can't yet see. But what we can take from this early stage is that flying in hot, high terrain with a heavy load can quietly push an airplane to its absolute limits, even when everything else looks perfect. A clear day, a capable airplane, and an experienced pilot. Yet tragedy struck within minutes. The data recorders may soon show whether this was a power issue, a density altitude trap, or a combination of both. For now, all we can do is learn from it. And remember the family who lived through it. That's where things stand for now. The investigation's ongoing, and I'll be covering every update as soon as the NTSB releases more details. If you want to stay on top of this case and learn from how these real-world conditions play out in the cockpit, make sure to subscribe and follow along.